Hello fellow book nerds, this is Gabby and today we're talking about The Wolf and the Woodsman. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be reviewing The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid, which is the new release. I think it came out, I want to say June, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Yeah, I pre-ordered this book and I was so excited about it, and I finally got around to reading it and I'm ready to talk to you about it. So this is a very exciting one because if you've been around for a while, you might know that I did this whole video where I read Eastern European inspired books because myself, I'm Polish and I'm really fascinated by the folklore, and I love reading things with either Russian or Polish folklore. I'm not Russian, but I feel like the folklore can be quite similar. And this book is inspired by Hungarian folklore, so I thought it'd be just up my alley. I'd probably love it. And you know what? I did. So let me tell you firstly what this is about. So in The Wolf and the Woodsman, we follow Evike, who lives in this village that's one of the few remaining pagan villages in this country, Regország. So Regország is where the country, but the country is very religious. They have adopted a new god, which is kind of like allegory for Christians, I guess. And then we have Evike's village, which is a pagan village. And then we also have Yehuli men, who are Jewish coded. So the author herself, I think, either is Jewish or has Jewish descent, and I know she wanted to incorporate her ethnicity and her heritage into this book. She also, I think, comes from Hungarian descendants or something like that. So like I said, we follow Evike, and like I said, she lives in a village, one of the few last one remaining, with people who are considered pagans, and they worship old gods. And because they worship the old gods, they have access to old magic. So every single woman and a girl in the village has access to kind of 3 or 4 types of magic. All of them usually can do fire, they can be healers, they can forge things like silver and stuff. That one was, I was a bit interesting. And then they can also, some of them are seers. That's why the girls are very coveted in the village, because they have this magic. But Evike is literally the only singular person in the village who has absolutely no magic, and she's considered kind of cursed by the gods because of that. People say it's because of her mixed heritage, because like I said, because she is part Yehuli, part whatever, the pagan people. Because she has no magic, she's been ostracized and picked upon and bullied and just abused really in this village, and her life's been very hard. But something that happens in this village every couple of years, the king sends his woodsman, which is kind of like a order that you can join. They're very religious, but they're also like hunters and stuff. The king usually sends the woodsman about once every 2-3 years to take one of the wolf girls. The women in the village are called wolf girls because of the wolf cloaks. So yeah, he takes one of the wolf girls because he wants access to their magic. It's time for the woodsman to come again, and they know that they want a seer, and there's only 2 seers in the whole village, and the village doesn't want to give up the seer. So instead they pretend that Evike is the seer. They dye her hair white and basically give her up to the woodsman. This really hurts because obviously it's harsh that they didn't even talk about this. They just basically, the assumption is that the girls die, so they basically just gave her up for slaughter. So Evike goes with the woodsman, and one of the woodsmen is this mysterious woodsman who only has one eye, so he must be very pious, and their leader. And it's kind of about their journey to the capital, what happens there. But really this is a book about coming to terms with yourself, your religion, your belonging, your culture, all of the wonderful things. I actually really love this book. I will talk about specific aspects of it, but I just thought it was brilliant. I gave it 5 stars. It's not even that big of a book, but what it did with its time was really beautiful and really resonated with me. So yeah, let's get into details. Let's talk about plot, writing, characters, all of that. You can find whatever section you were interested in down below. I'm gonna timestamp it. This was so good. So firstly, let's talk about writing. So the writing was so beautiful. It was maybe it wasn't flowery by any means, that's not what I would describe it as, but it felt like reading an old fairy tale. It gave you this eerie feeling of uneasiness, and I think it was very appropriate because this is based on like old Eastern European folklore and fairy tales, and they all have this really eerie, like uncomfortable feeling about it. If you know like the original Brothers Grimm fairy tales, I know they're German, not Hungarian, but still, the original fairy tales, they were dark and gritty and gruesome and really not suited for children. So that kind of gave me that feeling of it being dark and like real in a sense, but like also iridescent and otherworldly at the same time. I really liked it. I thought it was executed well. That's the feelings I had, and I think that's the feelings I was meant to have, because it's kind of like a dark fairy tale kind of feeling. So the writing was really pretty. I'm really impressed that it only offers the view, so that's really, really cool to see. And like I said, not overly flowery if that's not your thing, but really good at like building atmosphere. So plot. Interestingly enough, I think this book has two very distinct parts. They're not physically like indicated in any way, but I would really say the first half is very different than the second half. Not worse, not better. I liked both equally, but it was different. The first half is mostly just us going through the woods and really experiencing the woods and bonding with the woodsman and all of that. So that was like really cool. Really reminded me of The Bear and the Nightingale, Uprooted, that kind of thing, you know. And then the second half is way less focused on the romance, but rather it goes into Evike and her culture and her relationships and her magic and all of that. So it was really well done. I think it was definitely different than I expected, because I feel like when you hear the synopsis, I thought the whole plot was going to be just them prancing around the forest and bonding, and not exactly what it was, but I think the second half really brought it all together and it was very interesting. And it's a standalone as well, and it was perfectly wrapped up. I think it has everything that it needs, and it doesn't really need to be any longer or have any more books. It just told a perfect story in whatever word count it had, and I think that's very impressive by itself. Okay, let's talk about characters. So Evike, I actually think she's quite a unique main character. So I would say she's one of those really flawed characters because she's very complex and has a lot to her. She had a very hard time growing up because of the abuse she suffered from people that were her guardians, but also other people from the village. The fact that she got so much vitriol really because she didn't have any magic, and all of that, it really made her into this bitter person who's like really clinging to survival. She is very determined but also ruthless, and it kind of feels like justified because she's never got any kindness, so why should she give any kindness? But she definitely has kindness in her. It's just been kind of brought down and whipped out of her literally, and it's very complex. And I loved also how the themes of culture, belonging, sacrifice, power, all of that came in her character. She was really the star. I mean, the romance I was really a fan of. I thought it was executed well. There was tension, there was building, it was good enemies to lovers really, but the romance definitely took a back seat to the character development and the evolution of Evike, especially in the second half. Actually, the romance felt a little bit maybe contrived just because we kind of abandoned it for a second there, but I still like, I give it a pass. I was still a fan, but I think just having Evike grow so much as a person by herself as well with people other than the love interest was really good, and I really appreciated that. Actually, I think it was executed very well. I really liked her. She was a bit ruthless and there was a lot of interesting questionable choices being made, but I thought it was done well. Then we have Gaspar. So he's the love interest. So he's one of the woodsmen, and he definitely also has a lot of growth through this. So because of his circumstances in life, he really gets a lot of abuse as well, but also the way his religion works is the more self-mutilation and sacrifice and pain you go through, the more pious you're considered. So for example, people would like cut off their ears, gouge out their eyes, do very, very gruesome, awful things in the name of God. He's believes in it, and he believes in his god, and Evike is everything that's evil about the world because she's a pagan, and everything that comes bad to their countries because of pagans. So it's very, very interesting how his character progression goes as well. I think he grows quite a lot. I think it's sometimes a bit hard with this witch hunter romances and stories to get on board because they start off very abusive. His story was interesting because it included a lot of self-loathing, self-exploration, self-forgiveness, forgiveness for others, and all of that I thought was executed well and interestingly, and both of them were quite interesting. Like I said, it was Evike's story, not his, but I think he was a good supporting character in that sense, and he was a good love interest as well. And I guess more of a secondary characters, there was quite a lot of them. I mean, there was the whole Woodsman order, and there was the villagers, the pagans, the king, like all of that, and I think all of that was really well executed because there was not really right or wrong. Everyone was really ruthless and really set in their own beliefs, but had kind of reasons for it, but it's up to you to decide whether the reasons were good enough. There was definitely a little bit forgiveness going on that I don't know if I would give, but overall, like, all the characters were very well fleshed out, even if they weren't like prominent characters with a lot of page. I think because Evike, who's the POV character, is so reflective as well, so you really get to know them through her eyes, and everyone I feel like got what they deserved in terms of the screen time and the reflection and the depth that they deserved. Everyone had very, very complicated complex feelings, but all of that was done very well, and I like that it wasn't a good versus evil kind of thing. It was definitely more complex than that, more interesting than that, and that was done very well. I was really impressed. And the last thing I usually talk about is themes, and there were so many. This book was fascinating. Like I said, the author is Jewish, she's of Hungarian descent. I think it was very, very interesting how religion was brought into it. So like I said, there were 3 main types of religion, but there was even more than that. It was a very complex world. It was super interesting the way the religious groups were coded as real world religions, how that was explored as well. So like I said, we have the pagans. So the pagans believe in kind of multiple gods, but their gods are super interesting because they don't consider gods to be perfect. They kind of consider gods to be just like us, make mistakes, have bad days, all of that, and it's very, very, very fascinating how they look at the gods. And then we have the other religion, the main religion that stands kind of for Christianity, and they have only one god that's never wrong, that's perfect. They have the concept of hell, they have concept of like priests, ministers, all of that, and they're extremely pious, and the things they do in the name of religion were horrific. So it just kind of makes you feel like, this perfect good god makes you do that. And I like that Evike had a lot of opportunity to challenge that, and then also Gaspar had the opportunity to challenge her in return, because there's a lot of like talk about it and what it means and who's right, who's wrong, and how it's stupid in some ways and smart in others. It was very interesting. And then we also have Yehuvi, who are, like I said, the Jewish coded, and they were they had this like street they could only live on in the kingdom. The only jobs they could do was like in financial sector, because the Christian, I don't remember the name, they were thought of the financial things to be like prohibited and stuff. There was even Shabbat, and I think that was super, super, super interesting how that was handled as well, because their religion's different and it's more like, I guess, Judaism. But the fact that Evike is half Jewish but never interacted that much with her dad, who was Jewish, then gets later opportunities to meet some people that were the Yehuvi and stuff. That was super fascinating how she was navigating it from having grown up with a completely different religion and completely different set of values, but how she found that belonging in family. I think that was really well done. The whole theme of religion was fascinating. And what I found very interesting is that each of these groups had their own god, but their own god gave them a different kind of magic or power, or however you want to name it, and all of them had magic, so all of them technically were kind of real in a sense. So I just find it fascinating how being a character in this world, how you accept this duality of my god's real because I have a proof because he's giving me power, but then other gods must be real because they're also giving power. So that was super fascinating. That's what I thought about. What would I think if I lived in this world? Very, very interesting. Not really touched upon that bit that everyone's like kind of real because of that, but like it was still well done. And because the Yehuvi were coded Jewish, I think also anti-Semitism is definitely a big part, because the Yehuvi are definitely subjugated group with almost no rights, and it was kind of like the early era of Hitler's rule and stuff, where they had their own quarter to live in and all, and had very limited rights and all of that. So that definitely heavy commentary on that as well. I mean, I don't know if it's saying something revolutionary, because we all know that anti-Semitism is wrong, but obviously it was nice to meet like actual characters from the actual culture as well. So yeah, that was very well done, very interesting overall. With that, like, kind of touched upon it, but there also comes a theme of family and your community, and how important and precious that is, and how hard it is to find sometimes, and what it means, and how sometimes we love people who hurt us. All of that was executed brilliantly. I think it was just so powerful, and you really feel like Evike not knowing who her people were, what her place in the world was, and all of that. It was really beautiful, and it definitely kind of maybe portrays some like unhealthy relationships, in the sense that there were people who really abused and wronged her, and she still kind of ends up forgiving them, and it's kind of portrayed like they love her even though they abused her, or like they abused her but doesn't matter because they love her. But I think it's not a bad thing. It's not that the author agrees with it, it's just nuance, you know. It's just very interesting conversations being had, because sometimes people who hurt us are people who love us. So there's definitely more nuance to the conversation. I really appreciate that author brought this. It's an adult novel, so it definitely has a more sophisticated understanding of these relationships and stuff, and I really appreciate that. I like that it wasn't black and white, and it was a bit hard, a bit complicated, a bit of resentment still, but like love and family, and yet sometimes family can be the one to hurt you, and I like that that was kind of discussed and worked through for the character of Evike. Another very interesting aspect of the book I found was that in a lot of cases self-harm and sacrifice, in that sense of physical pain, was the thing that pleased the gods and gave you power. So it was very interesting how the book kind of equated power with sacrifice and self-harm. It was definitely like an interesting take, and it was very gruesome and very vitriol in a sense, where yeah, losing like an eye or something could make you more pious, more deserving of God's love, and it kind of feels like something crazy to say, but in this world you actually get more power. Like if you hurt yourself, you get power, you get more magic. So it's not like a commentary on it being ridiculous or something. It's like it does though. Like I don't know, I didn't know where the author was going with that, and for a second there I was like I don't know, this but like I said, it's an adult novel, so I think it can have a little bit more nuance, and we don't always need a good lesson out of it, even though I'm sure there were some themes and takeaways that I didn't completely get that maybe I should have thought of. But I can totally understand that it's maybe also there's no lesson there, because it is a nuanced conversation rather than a lecture, you know. So I appreciate it. I appreciate everything. Like this book was just so well done in terms of like its complexity, its compellingness. It just had so much to say, but didn't also preach to you. It gave you the story, and you have to work out what it means to you. Overall, I think that Wolf and the Woodsman will be a book I'll keep thinking of, maybe even read it from time to time just to get more, and I'd definitely be interested in reading some more interviews or maybe articles on like the meaning and the intention behind it. But I really enjoyed this. I have to say I loved all of the folklore and the magical creepy creatures that were there. I love that it was all like very creepy and weird and like make it gross, basically grimify it, you know, like it's a fairy tale but make it grim. Like Brothers Grimm. Do you think that's where the word grim comes from? Because of the Brothers Grimm? Because they're grim. Anyway, I absolutely, like I said, love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I would highly recommend it if you're even a little bit interested in anything that I said. This book does this, so all of the themes really does them justice, and is an interesting conversation, nuanced one, and really important one, I think. So yeah, I would recommend The Wolf and the Woodsman. Really good one. This is an author to look out for. I'm definitely following them on Twitter, so I always like keep an eye out on their working on next. I think there's another book, someone said it's like Winterwood mixed with something else, and I loved Winterwood. I mean, I kind of loved it. It was a very interesting experience, but I really think that a book similar to it I could definitely devour, especially if this offers talent for writing. So let me know if you read The Wolf and the Woodsman. What did you think about it? Would you pick it up based on my review if you haven't read it? I hope so. I really hope this book reaches a lot of people, because it's definitely very beautiful and very good, really. I don't know what else to say. It was good. Hauntingly beautiful, stunning debut, just like Samantha Shannon said. We love, respect Samantha Shannon. Also, Alex E. Harrow also blurbed this book. She said, gorgeously written and grimly real, The Wolf and the Woodsman is a bloody fable about two people caught in jaws of history. It's quite literally took my breath away. I agree, Alex E. Harrow. I'll agree. I just love Alex E. Harrow. S.A. Chakraborty. I love this book. I hope you love it too. If you enjoyed the video, if you could comment, like, subscribe, it really helped me out and I appreciate it. But that's it from me, and I see you in my next one. Bye! Trying to wave with my walk.